Hi, welcome back. I'm realizing that my hat clashes with the background quite a bit, but we're going to roll with that anyway. And that's not the reason I'm really here to talk today. What I really am here for is to talk about our all-new Rogue2 gel core pickleball paddle. Now, if you're not familiar with Rogue, gel core, or Players Pickleball, here's a little info for you. Players Pickleball operates out of Bellingham, Washington, which is a town of about 80,000 people in the northwest corner of the northwest state of the United States. Bellingham is less than 100 miles from Bainbridge Island, Washington, the birthplace of pickleball. Players Pickleball started making paddles in 2014 as a contract manufacturer. We've made more than 60,000 paddles across over a dozen different models for multiple manufacturers. In 2018, we launched as an independent brand with our primary focus of creating top-quality paddles developed through a process of scientific analysis matched with real-world player feedback. We believe we can use our scientific approach to paddle making to create paddles just as good or better than the other companies out there, and that we can do it at a lower price by selling directly to customers through our website. All of our paddles are made in Bellingham, Washington, and are USAPA approved. Our first-gen Rogue paddles were revolutionary for two primary reasons. Number one, gel core. You can read all about gel core on our website. Number two, direct consumer pricing. Because we sell direct to customers, there's no unnecessary markup for the middleman in distribution or retail. Okay, back to the Rogue 2. If you have your current paddle and it's not a Rogue 2 anywhere handy, I suggest you grab it and take a quick look at it. Odds are good. Now there are a few exceptions of course to this, but odds are good. It's got a honeycomb core, it's got a composite skin, whether that's fiberglass, carbon fiber, in some cases maybe aluminum. It's going to have some sort of flexible edge guard that's wrapped around, glued to it. It's going to have some foam pieces or maybe balsa wood inside the handle, probably a plastic or rubber butt cap, and then of course a grip wrapped around it. There are always some exceptions to that, like I said, but for the most part, 95 at least percent of pickleball paddles are made using that structure. The Rogue 2, however, is a little different. At a quick glance, it's easy to see one of the key features of the Rogue 2, and that is this carbon fiber vibration damping throat reinforcement here. And that does a couple of key things. One, pretty obviously, it makes this critical junction here between the paddle face and the handle quite a bit stronger. It's a total of 8 layers, 4 on each side, that we've added to the paddle, and that's going to make this paddle really stiff, really responsive, and of course durable. If you've been playing pickleball for any amount of time, you probably have seen, whether it's yours or somebody you know, paddles that break right here at this handle joint. It happens, unfortunately. You know, we're asking a lot out of these materials to keep them super lightweight and durable, and sometimes they will break here. So this is our effort at Players Pickleball to prevent that. Now, the second feature here is something that you're not going to see, and that is within the material that we're using. So while it may look like standard carbon fiber on the surface, which is a very cool material, by the way, carbon fiber is ultra lightweight, really strong, really rigid, used in all sorts of high-tech applications out there, race cars, high-end bikes, all that fun stuff. One of its drawbacks, however, as a result of this, is that it does an exceptional job of transferring energy from one point to another. So any sort of vibration, any sort of oscillation is going to be transferred along that material from one end to the other. So in a case like this, where we've got ball impact out here on the paddle face and your hand here, you don't necessarily want to have that transfer coming through really as well as carbon fiber can. So what we did is, in the layup of this material, we added in some top secret materials that do a really fantastic job of cutting out those vibrations, and we'll cut away ourselves here to a little demonstration to show that to you. So here we have two virtually identical pieces of carbon fiber, same shape, same size, but if you listen to the two, it's plain to see that they're quite different. On the left is standard carbon fiber, kind of run-of-the-mill stuff, and on the right is our vibration damping carbon fiber used on the Rogue 2 paddle. Plain to see the difference here. Now, that's a fun demonstration, but it doesn't necessarily prove a reduction in vibration. To do that, we need to break out a little science. At Players Pickleball, we like science. It's true. So we created a test fixture that allowed us to measure and compare how these two parts handle impact vibrations. So here we are looking at a graph of the acceleration measured on these two components. So in pink we have the standard carbon fiber, and in blue we have our vibration damping carbon fiber. And there's two key things here that you'll notice. So the first thing we'll look at is the peaks on this graph. And here with the standard carbon fiber in pink again, we see a peak here of over 8. Over here we're beyond 6.3, 8.2, and off the chart here beyond 9. And if you compare that to the vibration damping carbon fiber, here we're at 2.3, 2.7, 2.1, 2.1. So you can see right away that that peak, that initial impact, is significantly lower with our vibration damping carbon fiber. The second key thing to look at is the duration of the vibration that continues after that initial impact. So again, we're measuring the acceleration in meters per second over time here at the bottom. So here, if we look at this first one, this first impact is a little over half a second with the standard carbon fiber, and that continues all the way through here to almost 2 seconds. So let's call that about a second and a third or so. And if we compare that same impact to the vibration damping carbon fiber, the initial point is about the same, but just maybe less than a half a second later, those vibrations have pretty much ended. Obviously, when you're playing, you're not going to feel this much detail, but this is kind of the science that we rely on to tell us that our marketing claims are true. We can actually stand behind them because here we have data proving our claims. So there's another key feature hiding within this paddle, but before we get to that, I just want to talk about kind of the overview of it. It's kind of your more modern hybrid shape. So you can see here it's a little bit narrower than paddles traditionally have been and a touch longer. So it's about 16 3/8 in length and about 7 3/8 in width. So that comes out to just a touch under the maximum allowable dimensions of 24. The thickness, it's a 1/2 inch thick core. The handle length is about 5 inches to midway through the wrap here. I know everybody measures that a little bit differently. We kind of try to look at the usable space, and so you can hike up about that far and you're still going to be good. So that's 5 inches there. It weighs just under 8 ounces, so 7.8 is the target weight, and of course there's a little variation, plus or minus maybe 0.2 of an ounce on top of that. So the second key feature to talk about with the Rogue2 paddle is our second generation gel core technology. Now, there's a lot of information that we've published out there, a lot of reviews that people have made about gel core, and you can read a lot about that. I'm not going to go super in depth to it here because that other information does exist, and I can get a little wordy about some of the details of this. But what it is within the paddle core and the honeycomb itself, we've added an elastomeric gel material. And what that material does is kind of two things. It does a fantastic job of absorbing impact. So there we talk about this throat reinforcement. The gel core is doing the same thing. It's almost like a silly putty type consistency where you can kind of pull on it and stretch on it, but it always returns to its natural shape, but it does it slowly. So if you imagine a rubber band, you stretch out and you let it go and it snaps back. Well, this material, if you stretch it out and you let go, it slowly makes its way back to its original shape. And so what happens with that is when a ball impact hits the paddle face, there's sort of a shock wave that spreads out from that point. And when that shock wave hits this gel material, it absorbs a lot of that impact. And rather than it kind of echoing almost around the inside of the paddle and eventually down to your hand, it's absorbed before that can happen. So that's point one that it does. The second thing that it does is it takes the mass of the paddle and it spreads it to the outside. So we often use the example of an ice skater spinning on the ice. And I think we can all imagine, we've all seen it, the ice skaters with their arm tucked in and they spin super fast and they put their arms out and instantly they slow down. So anytime you hit a ball with a paddle, if you hit dead on the center, there's no temptation for that paddle to rotate. But if you hit slightly off center one way or another, the paddle's going to try to rotate away from the ball. And you're going to feel that immediately with kind of the sound it makes and the way it feels in your hand, but also you're not going to get the ball deflection that you expect. The ball's going to maybe go off target. It's going to feel a little dead. And that's kind of where we get that sense of what the sweet spot of a paddle is. So that all kind of makes sense. But if you can take the mass of the paddle and spread it out to the outer edges here, what you do is effectively act like that ice skater with its arms out, and it's going to resist rotation. So if you hit the ball slightly off center, it's going to rotate less away than it would if the mass was consistent throughout. So that's the second point that gel core does. Number one, it improves the vibration absorption, and number two, it spreads the mass out to the outer edge of the paddle itself to stabilize it, widen that sweet spot. Give you more predictable play. So That's what the gel core is about. So we've talked about the Rogue2 overall, its dimensions, its weight, its thickness, some of the key features, the vibration damping, throat reinforcement here, the internal gel core structure of it, some of the improvements to durability, cosmetics, etc. It's available. I've got the wood grain one here. It's available. Here's a yellow one I happen to have in front of me. It's also available in several other colors that I'll put in a photo right here, all on our website, playerspickleball.com. So the other thing I want to talk about with these paddles is their price. So typically when you make a product, you look at your cost of goods, how much it costs you to get all the materials, the labor it costs to put it together, and you just run a formula on that, a multiplier, depending on kind of what your method is, what your overhead costs are. And if we run those numbers, we could easily be charging well over $150 for this paddle. It makes sense. It's a competitive paddle. It can play with the best of them out there. You're going to start seeing this paddle winning championships soon, I guarantee it. And essentially, we could have gone that route, and we chose not to because it doesn't fit in with our kind of core values of keeping costs down to you, the players, as much as we can. And so what we've done instead is we currently have it with an MSRP of $124.99. That's kind of the overview of the Rogue2. Really appreciate you taking the time to sit here and listen to me ramble and dealing with my mismatched colors. I am one of the co-founders of the company, so I'm a little bit passionate about what we're doing here. Again, appreciate your time. Thank you. Check it out, playerspickleball.com. Rogue2 second generation gel core. Get yours now. Thanks.